Sorry for the late video, guys. I had to go out and fight this guy called the Emperor of Man. He controlled like the entire galaxy, and I had to just destroy all of his forces, smash his entire empire, the entire religion that was built up to worship him.
I mean, that's one way to start a video. I don't think anyone was upset that this video was late, question mark. You upload like 78 videos a day. But yep, Harmon Smith. It's Harmon Smith. Who'd you think it was gonna be? It's Harmon Smith. I do think it's funny that Harmon Smith is absolutely gaining more recognition on the internet at large, and yet his sub count, I think, has actually gone down over the years, which is usually the opposite of how this works. But today we're going to be watching a video called Snoy's Worship Astrobot to downplay the Nintendo games it blatantly ripped off Knack is back. This guy calls himself an author, by the way, and doesn't apparently know what a run-on sentence is. I was actually sent a different Harmon Smith video to respond to, this one, and I thought about talking about this one, but then Gara of Rage beat me to it, so go watch that video if you want the cringe of Harmon Smith, but without the raw Harmon Smithing of your computer. Although I do want to show how that video starts. Here, I'll just show you how that video starts.
Warhammer 40k is for cucks and fat.
He said it! He said it! But Harmon Smith has been rather upset about Astrobot, because Astrobot is a 3D platformer, and Harmon Smith is a Nintendo fanboy, which means Harmon Smith actually genuinely believes that Nintendo should have, like, complete ownership of the 3D platforming genre. But just in the last 3 days, Harmon Smith has uploaded Astrobot is Knack 2.0, one just called Astrobot, where he just like whines about it for 8 days straight. And now here we are with, again, Snoy's Worship Astrobot to downplay the Nintendo games it blatantly ripped off Knack is back. But I'll hear you out. I'll hear you out, Harmon. Let's see what you got this time.
Had to take him out, had to take out Earth, you know, name Terra, and now in the year 41,000.
Oh, that was all a Warhammer reference. Not gonna lie, I thought his big rambly intro was a Warhammer reference, but it was like just slightly wrong enough that I was like, okay, is this some like obscure other universe that I just don't know about? Like I was biting my tongue on making a Warhammer joke during the intro, but it was just like slightly off, so I kept it to myself. But no, that was just a really dumb Warhammer intro. I mean, I thought Warhammer was just for cucks and figs, but, you know, moving on.
It's now time to go back to what I was always doing before, talking about video games. Specifically talking about, like, Sony and the Astrobot thing and just everything that's going on with that, because this is, I think, one of the most blatant AstroTurf shill campaigns I've seen since, like...
Since the last Mario game? Or the last Zelda game? Like, I get that people like Mario and Zelda games, but if you want to talk about AstroTurf hype campaigns, like, literally whenever Nintendo announces anything, you get an AstroTurf hype campaign. Like, people are already saying the new Zelda game coming out later this year, that whatever it's called, the one where you play as Zelda, I'm already seeing a lot of people saying that's going to be a Game of the Year contender. It's not out yet.
Horizon Zero Dawn, maybe? Like, the thing I compared this to immediately was Knack, right? Because
it's a platformer published by PlayStation? Like, that's really the only similarity I'm seeing between Astrobot and Knack. These games are not similar.
This has the Knack stamp all over it, right? What happened when Knack came out?
Everyone agreed that it was underwhelming and lame, and it became a meme forever. If you're trying to make the argument that people were, like, fake hyped and, like, using Knack as some, like, big standard for gaming when it wasn't worthy of that, I would love to know what you're snorting.
Right, PS3 launch window, nothing was coming out. People were unironically trying to sell you on the PS4 by, like, hyping up Octodad and Knack.
Okay, Octodad slapped. I will not accept Octodad slander on this channel. But also, what the fuck is this? PS3 launch window was empty, so then people tried to hype up games on the PS4 in the PS3 launch window. This is why you need to do multiple takes of your videos, my bud, my buddy, my friend, my wonderful, wonderful revenue creator for me. Like, do multiple takes of your videos. Have bullet points. That sentence made no sense.
Right, those were like the big games of that release window. You know, Octodad was Octo crap, right?
I'm gonna throw you down a fire escape.
Probably a cuck too, because the kids don't look anything like him, but like...
He's an octopus. He's an octopus as a dad. That's the joke. That is the joke.
And Knack was severely hyped as a legitimate like competitor to Super Mario 3D World.
I don't even remember which Mario game 3D World is. People love to do this thing where they're like, oh, Mario has such an amazing track record. Every single time that a new Mario platformer comes out, it's like the greatest, like the new gold standard. I have no fucking clue which one 3D World is. Super Mario 3D World, I cannot picture the game in my brain because like 80% of them look the same to me, especially the ones during the Wii U era. I cannot be the only one with this problem.
Right. I actually dug up like some of the old videos like in regards to this topic, but yeah, there were a lot of snoys back then, you know, a decade ago, hyping up this idea that Knack was like outperforming Mario and that Mario was on the way out and that Mario would be like a PS4 release before long.
Yeah, that was a stupid thing to say back then, and it's a stupid thing to say now. You always do this thing where you bring up the most fringe, stupid arguments that no logical person takes seriously, and then you try to use them as an actual, like, opposition to your way of thinking. Like, your way of thinking is justified because of this stupid fringe person. But, like, no, it's a stupid fringe person. It doesn't justify anything other than that stupid fringe person being a stupid fringe person. It's the same reason why if someone was like, oh, man, I'm so smart, anyone should challenge, like, you should challenge me to Jeopardy, I'm so smart, I could beat anybody in Jeopardy. But then the only people they want to play in Jeopardy are, like, 4-year-olds. I was sick for a week and my fucking analogy game is still on fire.
Didn't happen, obviously, but it was one of the most obnoxious things I've ever seen in my life, right? It really cemented just everything wrong with the PS4 generation in just one single release.
I can't help but notice we're over 2 minutes into your video about Astrobot, and you haven't actually talked about Astrobot yet. It's just an observation from yours truly. Be awesome if we got to the fucking point eventually.
You know, all hype, all game journal enthusiasm, but no real substance.
So it was a AAA game. Like what you're describing is every AAA game. This is why people don't take journalists seriously. Oh, it was all hype from journalists, and there was just no substance. Yeah, welcome to games journalism. Don't listen to them. They don't represent you. They don't represent me. Stop listening to them. If anything, you're just proving the point of people like me who have been saying this for years on end, because you're using an example back from the PS4 launch era of game journalists being out of touch. They're still out of touch, my friend. Why did you listen to them back then? Why do you listen to them now?
You would be very hard-pressed today to find anybody who knows about Knack outside of people who may be hardcore Donkey fans, right?
I mean, most everyone knows what Knack is. It's a meme. That's why this is a bad analogy. No one actually thinks Knack was an amazing thing. No one remembers Knack fondly other than the memes.
Like, Knack is an irrelevant IP that was in no way, shape, or form relevant, but it was shilled by the gaming media in order to try and destroy Nintendo.
Okay, I'm just going to look this up because maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but let's just look up Knack on Metacritic, since apparently people were shilling for Knack so hard. Oh, goodness. A 54 Metacritic score. 54. Do you know how bad a game has to be for the critics, the pro critics, to give it a 54? That is a crucifixion. I don't even know the last time I saw a AAA console exclusive game get that low of a score. Like, to put that into perspective, Redfall got a 56. Knack scored lower than Redfall, and you're trying to say the journos were shilling for it? My friend, this dog is not gonna hunt.
Right, that's what this all comes down to. That's what it all amounts to. Like, that's the issue here, is that this was a release geared towards trying to diminish Nintendo's brand value.
Did you hear the people kind of muttering in the background of the audio there? Here, I'll make it full screen. Really get close to the ear, really get close to the speakers here. It sounds like there's someone talking in the background.
Right, that's what this all comes down to. That's what it all amounts to. Like, that's the issue here, is that this was a release geared towards trying to diminish Nintendo's brand value.
Bro, you live with your parents still, don't you? You live with your parents still. There's nothing wrong with living with your parents, by the way. As an adult living with your parents, there's not actually anything inherently wrong with that. But in your case, uploading several videos a day being this delusional, this spiteful, this hateful to absolutely everyone who disagrees with you, and on top of that, living with your parents, I'm just going to say yikes. It might be time to get a job.
And today, nothing has changed, right? A couple of weeks back, Sony released a statement saying that, like, we don't have any classic IPs. We don't have anything that anybody cares about, which is true.
No, the reason why that statement went viral is because it's not true. It's not true that Sony don't have in-house IPs. They have a million in-house IPs that they're refusing to use. They're refusing to revive. They have dozens of IPs that could be revived at a moment's notice, and they're actively choosing not to. That's why this statement went viral, not because it wasn't true. I can name a dozen off the top of my head, Sony IPs they could revive at a moment's notice. They could revive Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Infamous, Killzone. What's the other one? Resistance. Those are the two shooters they used to have. Oh no, there's a third shooter they used to have because of SOCOM. They have so many IPs that they're literally just sitting on and doing nothing with.
Right. Nobody cares about anything PlayStation has ever produced, no matter what people try to tell you.
Twisted Metal, that's another one.
PlayStation has never been able to develop a brand of icons like Nintendo has.
Right, which is why Astro, a game literally dedicated to that library of icons, is selling so well and being received so well.
Right. So immediately after this guy says that, it seems like Sony went into overdrive trying to sell us on the idea that PlayStation has this treasure trove of IPs that people deeply, deeply care about.
I mean, they do. That's why everyone yelled at him for saying there wasn't any. You see how that works? If PlayStation didn't actually have any IPs that anyone cared about, no one would have gotten mad at the guy for saying they don't have IPs that people care about. Like, this isn't hard to get. That statement wouldn't have gone viral if it was true.
And I think that's what Astrobot is mostly trying to do here. It's not trying to be a success on its own merits. It's desperately trying to establish the PlayStation brand as being on par with the Nintendo brand with
Oh, so it's a bad thing for a company to lean on their established IP? Interesting. Very interesting. I would like to point you towards a franchise called Super Smash Brothers.
All these characters that were at one point PlayStation icons. Oh, look, there's Solid Snake.
Wait, so they do have icons? You just said they don't have any icons, and then you just said they have all these characters that used to be icons. So do they? Are they sitting on icons, or are they not?
Who's in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? Oh, there's Ryu and Ken, who are also in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Are Ryu and Ken in Astrobot? Did I just miss that? Did I just look right over that? Why are they actually in there?
Oh, there's Crash Bandicoot, who Sony sold to Activision because they had no use for the character because they understood that the character had no value whatsoever.
So the character had no value whatsoever, but they sold him. You realize that's a contradiction. He had no value whatsoever, and yet they got money for him. Almost like he had value that you could literally put a dollar amount on.
Right. That is the state of PlayStation, is that they've always had to gaslight their audience into thinking their brand is a lot bigger and more relevant than it actually is.
No, that's not what PlayStation always has been. I'll give you a little olive branch. That's kind of what PlayStation is now, of just gaslighting people and to be like, oh, the PlayStation brand, all these characters in the PlayStation brand are so cool. And meanwhile, they're just they're making the same game over and over and over again with the same 3 IP. I will give you that much, even though that's not the point you're making. I'm trying to make reason out of the nonsense words coming out of your stupid face hole. But again, the reason why everyone yelled at Mr. PlayStation for saying there were no in-house IP, and the reason why Astrobot is hitting so many people's nostalgia chords, is because PlayStation does have a long legacy of beloved characters. That is undeniable.
It's why they fake sales numbers. It's why they try to pass off third-party games as being exclusives. And
they don't pass off third-party games as exclusives. They actually have third-party exclusives. That's just... Why'd you word it like that? There was no reason to word it like that. They don't pass them off as exclusives. They are exclusives sometimes.
They try to, aggressively downplay Nintendo titles, right?
I've literally never once seen anyone at Sony try to downplay the success of Nintendo. Like that just, I've never seen that a single time.
How many times have we seen over the past several days, YouTubers like RGT85 or Ruler2 Review or...
RGT85 is one of the biggest Nintendo apologists on this entire platform. Little weird for you to start eating your own here.
Any one of these random YouTubers like, oh, Astrobot is one of the best platformers I've played in the last decade. Coincidentally, Knack came out a decade ago. This is a phenomenal release.
Wait, so are you saying that Astrobot is on the same level as Knack in terms of quality? I'm so lost. I don't even think you know what points you're trying to make anymore.
Yeah, I don't talk about other platformers like Donkey Kong Country Returns Tropical Freeze or Kirby in the Forgotten Land or Super Mario Bros. Wonder, but Astrobot is just as good, if not better, than most of them.
And if you haven't played it, who are you to tell them they're wrong? Also, hot take, I don't think it's really that difficult to make a platformer on the same level as Donkey Kong Country Returns Tropical Freeze. I just don't think it's that difficult to make a game of that level of quality.
Even though we can clearly see, going back through your content, that you never once talked about Super Mario Bros. Wonder when it first came out, and yet you're going to pretend to be a huge fan in order to shill Astrobot. Or in order to push this narrative that Astrobot is just as good or better than Mario Wonder. And
I hate when people do this. I hate it so much. People do this to me sometimes. I'll be talking about a game and I'll compare it to a different game, and then people will be like, well, you never talked about that other game before. Yeah, I never fucking felt like it. It was never relevant. Like, my channel isn't my journal. Just because I didn't talk about it doesn't mean I didn't experience it or didn't have any opinions on it. This isn't an argument. It's not a gotcha. Unlike you, we can't make 50 videos a day about every thought that pops into our head.
This situation, I think, really demonstrates something I've been saying for the past year or so, ever since, the nobody is talking about it narrative started gaining steam, right?
The narrative that you literally just participated in? Like, literally just now?
The reality is, nobody who is really into video games is going online to talk about them, right?
Are you actually trying to argue that the people who talk about video games online don't actually play video games? My boy, you talk about the games more than most of us do. I actually make money off of my stupid fucking channel, and you make more videos than me. Thanks for giving me the complete argumentative high ground over you? What?
The people who are talking about games online are YouTubers and game journals who make money by stirring up controversy and being paid shills for products.
Paid shills? I would never shill for anything. Never in my life. I would never do that. Hello, I'm interrupting this video to remind you that this channel is sponsored by 4D Gaming. If you would like a really nice mousepad, go to 4dgaming.com and use code Joe for a discount. This channel is also sponsored by Glitch Energy. It's basically G Fuel, but better, so go to Glitch Energy and use code Joe for a discount. Thank you for letting me interrupt your content. I'll let you keep watching it now.
This is why you don't see people really talking about legitimately good games that come out, like Princess Peach Showtime, Unicorn Overlord, Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble.
You know what's funny? I did an ad read for Unicorn Overlord, and Harmon Smith yelled at me for it. I just think it's funny for you to be like, man, these YouTubers, they don't talk about games. They don't talk about good games. No one talked about Unicorn Overlord. I literally did a Unicorn Overlord ad read, and he name-dropped me to try and talk shit about it, and like 50 people sent me the link.
Zelda coming this month, Mario and Luigi coming in November, right? Again, everything is just a grift among the online gaming sphere.
That's right. I'm grifting. I'm grifting all the time. I mean, I thought I was just correcting the dumb shit that people say and advocating for better practices in the industry that I love and the art form that I love. But no, apparently I'm just grifting. I thought this was just a hobby that I made some money off of, but no, apparently just because money exchanged hands at some point, it's all a grift. You are pathetic.
And that's why all of them are so adamantly pro-Sony.
Ah, yes, all the YouTubers are adamantly pro-Sony. All of us YouTubers are adamantly pro-Sony. Holy cow.
Because Sony's brand is so reliant on those kinds of reviews and that kind of coverage that they can profit heavily off of.
See, the thing is, you're not even wrong. This is what bugs me so much about you, Harmon. And I know you watch my channel because you were watching my channel enough to see my fucking Unicorn Overlord ad read. I know you're hate watching me. So here is my genuine advice. You do this all the time. You are inches away from an actually really solid argument. Like, literally within grabbing distance of a very good argument. Sony absolutely relies on media coverage to sell their products. They absolutely rely on media, enhancement of their public perception. This is why they send review copies out with review guides. This is why they actively do not send review copies to people who have given them negative reviews in the past. This is something that they have been proven time and time again to do. They absolutely artificially inflate their scores, and they absolutely do the corporate equivalent of holding games hostage from journalists who need those games to talk about on their outlet because they're an outlet. They have to talk about the news, but in order to get a copy of the new game from Sony, they have to play nice with Sony's guidelines, and Sony's guidelines often involve juicing their review scores. This is absolutely something Sony does, and you are within spitting distance of making a very solid, factually true argument that you could have led with in this video. We are 6.5 minutes into this video, and you're only just now getting within spitting distance of a real point that could have been your whole thesis, and we're only just now getting to it. The only people watching your videos far enough to hear this are people watching videos like mine, because no one can sit through your videos this long without help. Oh, I'm sitting back down now. I was just pacing around my room. It's so frustrating watching you, bro. Like, it's genuinely so frustrating. Every single time I think you're about to get better, you just jump off a cliff.
Right? Nobody actually plays Sony games, but every single time going into the release of a Sony game, like, oh no, is this going to be the Nintendo killer? And that gets a ton of views from everybody who hates Nintendo.
I have not seen a single outlet or a single person call Astrobot a Nintendo killer. I haven't seen that a single time. This is what I mean. You were right in front of a genuine argument and a genuinely good point, and then this is where you went with it. What is wrong with you?
I remember in 2016 when the Ratchet and Clank remake came out, to tie in with the movie.
Yeah, you're the only one who remembers that, bud.
Right? Like, oh, Nintendo is doomed. Star Fox Zero is doomed. And, we've never gotten a new Ratchet and Clank game after that. Right? Nobody really cares about the IP. Nobody wants to see it come back. Nobody cares about it. Right? It's not relevant. And that's one of Sony's more relevant franchises, right?
Am I snorting peanuts? There was a Ratchet and Clank game 2 years ago.
That's the one icon. That's the one brand you might say is iconic to a certain demographic. But, it's nowhere near as relevant as even, a C-list Nintendo franchises like Star Fox or Metroid or F-Zero, right?
The fact that Metroid is even remotely viewed as a C-list franchise, the fact that you put Metroid in the same category as Star Fox and F-Zero, just pains my heart. It's not your fault that you did that. It's Nintendo's fault that it's like this. Metroid is one of the best Nintendo franchises. Metroid should be one of their front runners, and they're just refusing to make it such.
Ratchet and Clank isn't shit in the grand scheme of things.
Ratchet and Clank isn't shit in the grand scheme of things, but you just brought up the 2016 game, and then brought up F-Zero, a franchise that hasn't had a new game in, 20 years? And you also brought up Star Fox, a franchise that hasn't had a non-shit game in 20 years. This is just not a good analogy, my bud. I want you to get better, but this is just so difficult.
That is just so evident by just looking at just how quickly people move on past these releases. Astrobot really strongly reminds me of Palworld, right?
Fucking how? In what way?
Where it had that brief 2-week window of relevancy when people thought it was going to destroy Pokemon, and how it was gonna like own Nintendo and like
No one thought Power World was going to destroy Nintendo or destroy Pokemon. They just thought it was an alternative, a fun alternative, which it was. And if you want to talk about like, no, it had only had 2 weeks of relevance. There's over 23,000 people playing Power World on Steam right now. It is 9:30 a.m. on a Monday, and there's over 23,000 people playing Power World on Steam. I don't want to hear it.
just stick it to Game Freak, right? You know, that was what all of the hype and attention was about, right? It had nothing to do with Power World as a product. Nobody cares about Power World as an actual game.
I mean, if Power World was the same level of quality as the recent Pokemon games, it probably wouldn't have been successful. That's kind of the point.
It was just a method to attack Nintendo, right? It was a weapon to use to downplay the Pokemon IP.
Or it was a game made by some people who had an idea, and that idea was influenced by games that they've played. Kind of like how most game ideas are. I think I'm done with this one. I I just can't anymore. How long have I been recording for? 34 minutes. 34 minutes I've been recording this. I made it exactly 8 minutes and 20 seconds into your video. I can't do this anymore, buddy. I just can't. I'm gonna go cry. I'm gonna go cry. Toodles.